Welcome back, everyone. Our Premier League season is done, and we won 2-0 against Brighton. A bit of revenge for our bad results against them in recent games. But the first half was not something to write home about. The second half was a little bit better, but two wins on the bounce to end our Premier League season, and our full focus now is the FA Cup final. There's not much to speak about in the game, to be honest, because that first half was absolutely horrendous. It looked like the rest of the season and the way it was, where we are disjointed, we are misplacing passes, we are not following runners, and Brighton just kind of outplayed us. And then in the second half, we played a bit better. We pressed more, we were more careful on the ball, we were much better off the ball. And because we were able to stay in the game and Brighton couldn't finish their chances, we managed to go on and get a win. A beautiful ball by Casemiro over to Hojlund, who was making the run, but it fell for Dalot and a calm finish. And of course, Hojlund scoring another goal coming off from the bench, another ball played into him, a bit of dribbling, and a cool finish with his right foot, just like he did against Newcastle, coming into form just before the FA Cup final, which is good news for us. Dalot, being one of our most consistent players this season and probably our most improved, could easily be our player of the year. Hojlund, coming into form, as I just said, Garnacho and Rashford, there's a bit of a dilemma there. Whoever you go with in the final, you expect for an impact because Rashford, we know, can turn up in a big game and does always turn up against Manchester City. And Garnacho is a threat, whether coming from the bench or starting. We know that. So there's a bit of optimism and confidence going into the final, but I'm glad the Premier League season is done. It's been an horrendous season. We couldn't really do what we wanted to do. Ten Hag was plagued with so many injuries. The takeover also caused a bit of dilemma behind the scenes. Certain players not sure where their futures are, and we're not getting the Conference League position, and we probably might not get Europe if we don't win the FA Cup against City, which will give us Europa League. So, will it be beneficial to have a season without, European football for Ten Hag to have a much more better time dealing with the squad or whatever manager might come in if he does get sacked? I mean, that's another point that we can look at. You know, we're now at the point where does the FA Cup save Ten Hag? Does Ineos, stick with him whether he doesn't win the FA Cup? We will have to see what happens in the summer because there's a lot of managers that will be looking for jobs. Bayern Munich are still wanting a manager. They're still discussing things with Tuchel. Barcelona might be looking for a manager. You're looking at Liverpool. They might have gotten on the slot, but you never know how that might go. Chelsea could be getting a new manager depending on how they go with Pochettino. So it's not concrete to say that Ten Hag is going to be the manager at Manchester United next season, but he's got a much better chance than anyone else because he never had the best of resources to work with this season alone. Forget about having injuries. We didn't have the quality of players. We didn't have the squad depth to deal with the objectives that we had this season, which was probably going into a knockout stage in the Champions League. We got to the final of the FA Cup. We probably wanted to do more in the Carabao Cup, considering we were the defending champions before we were knocked out. And we look at the Premier League, we probably expected another top four finish, but so many things happened to us that we couldn't have those type of focuses. But all in all, it's good to have two wins on the bounce ahead of a final. Yes, City won the league, a fourth in a row. If you look at it on a footballing term, they've surpassed, Man United by doing it four times in a row. Even though Sir Alex did it twice, three times in a row, doing it four times in a row, whether it be the first time, like with City, it is something to look at. But those 115, financial charges that they are facing that is, around Manchester City, that will taint whatever they are doing, and you kind of think as a Man United fan, as rivals to Manchester City, you think to yourself that that is basically not what should be happening. But of course, it's out of our hands. They've done everything they can to delay it. I don't want to speak about that, but I am, of course, hoping that the charges, come through and that, of course, maybe a few titles, trophies get stripped away from them. So we'll see what happens there. But I couldn't care less with City winning the league. I just had to mention it because it happened on the same day that we ended our season. So maybe no European football. Maybe there is. We'll see. And we have to focus now on the FA Cup. We have a full week of resting. So the likes of Martinez, Varane, Bruno, Hojlund, Rashford, who's been being rested, in my opinion, ahead of the final. Garnacho, Ahmad, Mainu, all the players that we have that will be starting the game, you would want to have them have a week rest, leading up to that final. I had hopes for Amrabat starting in the final, but after the way he played in that first half, completely misplacing passes, being caught on the ball too many times, losing possession, it kind of makes me fear him being in the starting 11 against City. And if you have a run in Martinez back to you, push Casemiro back into the midfield, and you perhaps leave yourself open again if he plays with Mainu, and he loses his discipline as we have seen throughout the season. So I don't know how the final is going to go. Is it going to be a heartbreak? Is it going to be celebration? We don't know. We can look to last year's FA Cup final, how we started quite badly, and from that moment on, the game looked kind of lost, even though it was a close affair with 2-1, being the final score. But we didn't lay a glove on City in that final, other than getting a goal. But it wasn't like we were going to kick on from there, because once it got to 2-0, it looked very, very bleak for us. And I'm hoping that we approach this final much differently. I'll obviously do a much more in-depth preview on the final, who I think should be starting, how we can approach the game, what City's weaknesses are, etc. But Ineos needs to now start doing their work. The FA Cup final is the FA Cup final. But Ineos, Jim, Jason Wilcox, Omar Barada when he comes in, Dan Ashworth, who seems to be our sporting director, potentially, they're trying to get him out of Newcastle. He himself is doing the work. And of course, Sir Dave Brailsford, they need to do their work behind the scenes now, in terms of one, recruiting players, and two, getting an environment that can develop players, that can develop Manchester United and its first team forward so that we can start competing at the top again. Because as much as it's been a disastrous season, we need to be mindful of the fact that the main work was being done behind the scenes. The takeover that Sir Jim had was basically for the footballing structure of Manchester United to be refreshed, to be renewed. And that comes with perhaps and potentially getting a new stadium. You've seen the videos going viral online about the rain, the water at Old Trafford, the leaks in the roof. It's not nice to see. And as a Manchester United fan of 20 years plus, seeing our beloved Theatre of Dreams looking as broken as it is kind of the way Manchester United is. And Sir Jim and his team are definitely doing the work in the background. Whether Ten Hag is still the manager, come next season, is a possibility. But do not be surprised if he does get sacked and Sir Jim and Ineos decide to go with someone else who they think fits their project much more better if it is not Ten Hag. I, of course, will back Ten Hag until that final moment, when he does eventually leave or get sacked. But we have to be realistic. The squad needs to be overhauled, and we need to have a much better, fitter, and stronger squad on a mentality level and of course on a physical level next season, because we cannot have so many injuries. We cannot have so many things hindering our season. We need to be better in order for us to compete at the top again. But we're going to the FA Cup final. That is our last game for the season, and I would certainly hope that we do go on to win it. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for joining me and watching the video thus far if you have done so. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We will talk things all Manchester United. And I will be here during the preseason as well. So don't think after the FA Cup final that I will be gone. But we'll speak about that in more detail later. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day for the Red Devils. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. If you want more content on Manchester United, like, share and subscribe.